Welcome to SLP Nerdcast, your favorite professional resource for evidence-based practice in speech-language pathology. I'm Kate Granbois.
And I'm Amy Wonka. We are both speech-language pathologists working in the field and co-founders of SLP Nerdcast.
Each episode of this podcast is a course offered for ASHA CEUs. Our podcast audio courses are here to help you level up your knowledge and earn those professional development hours that you need. This course, plus the corresponding short post-test, is equal to 1 certificate of attendance. To earn CEUs today and take the post-test after this session, follow the link provided in the show notes or head to slpnerdcast.com.
Before we get started, one quick disclaimer. Our courses are not meant to replace clinical advice. We do not endorse products, procedures, or other services mentioned by our guests unless otherwise specified.
We hope you enjoy the course.
Are you an SLP or related professional? The SLP Nerdcast Unlimited subscription gives members access to over 100 courses offered for ASHA CEUs and certificates of attendance. With SLP Nerdcast membership, you can earn unlimited CEUs all year at any time. SLP Nerdcast courses are unique, evidence-based, with a focus on information that is useful. When you join SLP Nerdcast as a member, you'll have access to the best online platform for continuing education in speech and language pathology. Join as a member today and save 10% using code NERDCASTER10. A link for membership is in the show notes.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to SLP Nerdcast. We are here with 2 guests today who are in a different time zone, which is always really exciting for us. Welcome, Jacqueline Morton and Ronan Miller.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here. You're here today to discuss empowering caregivers in everyday lives of children who stutter. But before we get started, can you please tell us and our listeners just a little bit about yourselves?
Okay, shall I start?
Go for it.
Okay, I'm Jacqueline and I am a speech and language therapist and a mum of 2 boys. I worked in the NHS in the northeast of England for a long time. And then when I had my second child, I came out of the NHS and got quite interested in conscious parenting, mindful parenting, respectful parenting, that kind of world, thinking, my goodness, I don't know how to parent. What am I going to do?
Hear, hear.
And so I got into that world a little bit. And the reason why that's kind of important, I think, is I really, really care about parents. I really think that we've got a difficult job, and being conscious about parenting, I think, can be really helpful to ourselves and to our little people. So then I came back into the speech and language therapy world, and I work independently now with families and children who stutter. And I also do workshops for parents around the idea of minding less. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, really.
And Ronan, before you tell us about you, for all of our American counterparts and listeners, what is the NHS?
Yes, the National Health Service. So where people don't have to pay, they come and see us. What is really tricky, that sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But what's very, very tricky about the NHS is we have mega long waiting lists. So that kind of timely approach that all of us therapists would love to give is sometimes not available, as well as many other positives. But yeah, that's definitely a factor.
Interesting. Well, we could have a whole episode on the cultural intersections of medicine and therapy, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Ronan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I'm Ronan. I'm a person who stammers and I guess a researcher in some regard. I completed my PhD looking at the experiences of people who stammer in foreign language learning. And that was in some ways based around my own kind of interest in languages and experiences teaching English and learning Spanish. and finding myself in the stammering community and trying to link all of that up in a way that could potentially be helpful for people. And I'm also a volunteer with Stammer and Action for Stammering Children, which is another UK organization. And yeah, I've been working with Jacqueline for a bit over a year on some ways that we can potentially bring help to more parents, more carers of children who stammer. We're aware that that's a challenge that is out there, a challenge not just for speech therapists, but also for the families as well. So we've been trying to do something there.
Well, we're very excited for this conversation. Just a second before we get into the content, I do have to read our learning objectives and disclosures. I also just want to second what Jacqueline said about how hard it is to be a parent and how, it took me personally becoming a parent to realize all of the horrible things I had said to parents as a therapist, because living it is it's a really unique experience. So I'm very excited to center the experiences of parents and have, hold space for that in this conversation. But before we get there, I will read our learning objectives and disclosures. Learning objective number 1, describe the importance of caregiver involvement in the therapy process for children who stutter and how this can impact the effectiveness of therapy. Learning objective number 2, describe how technological advancements can facilitate support for families within speech-language pathology. And learning objective number 3, describe the collaboration between healthcare professionals and technology developers in creating applications like Penguin stammering support. Disclosures, course disclosure. This course focuses on an app called Penguin Stammering Support. As this app is unique, the course focuses on and only covers information that pertains to this technology. Jacqueline's financial disclosures. Jacqueline is an employee of Bennytalk, the company that builds the Penguin and Super Penguin apps. Jacqueline owns an independent practice working with children who stutter and their families. Jacqueline's non-financial disclosures. Jacqueline volunteers for the British Stammering Association, also referred to as STAMA, a charity organization. She also runs workshops for parents and SLPs called Minding Less About Stammering. Ronan's financial disclosures. Ronan is an employee of Bennytalk. Ronan's non-financial disclosures. Ronan volunteers for the British Stammering Association, also referred to as STAMA, a charity organization. Ronan also volunteers for a nonprofit called Action for Stammering Children. Kate, that's me, my financial disclosures. I am the owner and founder of Grandbois Therapy and Consulting and co-founder of SLP Nerdcast. My non-financial disclosures, I'm a member of ASHA SIG 12 and serve on the AAC Advisory Group for Massachusetts Advocates for Children. I'm also a member of the Berkshire Association for Behavior Analysis and Therapy.
Amy's financial disclosures, that's me. I am an employee of a public school system and co-founder of SLP Nerdcast. And my non-financial disclosures are that I'm a member of the American Speech Language Hearing Association Special Interest Group 12, which is AAC. And I participate in the AAC Advisory Group for Massachusetts Advocates for Children. All right, we've made it through the disclosures and the learning objectives. Now on to the good stuff. Jacqueline and Ronan, why don't you start us off just by telling us a little bit about the first learning objective? Why is it important to have caregivers be involved in therapy for children who stutter?
Okay, I'll open this one, Ronan, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Oh my goodness. So if we think about stammering, against, say, I don't know, speech sound disorders or whatever, we can sort of get little people in, work on their speech, and then they can go. With stammering, we don't know whether that child is going to stop stammering or if they're going to go on to stammer into adulthood. Lots of children stop, but then we've got a percentage of children who will go and stammer into adulthood. It's very much part of that human. It's a neurological thing. That's the way the brain is wired. Some people are born with stammery brains. And this sense of us as therapists being kind of in charge of therapy, in my mind, just sits really uncomfortably. It's actually not about us. If we can take the time with parents. And when I say take the time, sometimes that can be really difficult in itself, because we have children coming in to the clinic. Sometimes we might have, again, I'm talking about sort of an NHS framework, but sometimes we might just have 6 sessions. We've got parents coming in with potentially expectations of how can you fix my child? And that is because, you know, we look on the internet, we kind of in this sort of scrambling as a parent of, oh my goodness, my child's just started stammering, what on earth do I do? We come across things like, okay, this is how we overcome stammering, this is how we stop stammering, this is how we cure stammering. It's all there, and it's all very, very attractive to parents. So parents can come in with those sort of expectations very, very naturally. And as parents, we don't want to see our little people struggle. If then we kind of turn it on its head and think, okay, parents are actually the most important person for us to be taking the time with at this point. Often the little person doesn't have a problem with stammering. That's a generalization, but so often it's the parents who have all of that anxiety. That anxiety, those kind of thought processes of how can I make this stop? How can I fix this? They can immediately feed in to the little person inadvertently. You know, we do it with love. We say things like slow down or take your time, or because we think I don't want to see the struggle. So that the parent is actually the first step on the chain. And it is the parent who's going to be the supporter of that little person all through their life if they continue to stammer. You know, that advocacy, and I'm going to say the word acceptance loosely, because we don't necessarily need parents to be like flying the stammering pride flag. They don't need to love it. However, that sense of, okay, this is my stuff as a parent that's going on. I don't like this, or I'm struggling with this. And then separating that from, but actually, I think this is the best way for my child to be a confident communicator. So work around that, I think, is one of our most important roles.
You just said so many things that made me want to high five you through our Zoom screen here.
Completely.
I that was just so well said, and I wanted to scream, you know, here again multiple times. I think one of the things that struck me most about what you just said was this idea of separating a parent's need, a parent's anxiety, because it's true. I mean, you know, you worry about your kids at night when they're, you know, sick, or when, you know, it's our main jobs is to keep children. I always say to my kids, my number one job is to keep you safe, and my second job is to keep you happy, right? But when there's something wrong with our kids, it can be a major source of anxiety. And I love the idea of coaching families to identify their anxiety versus their child's experience, right? Because those are two different things. But when your kid is really little, there can be such a blend there.
Oh, absolutely. Can I share with you one of my favorite quotes?
Always.
This is by Alfie Kohn, who wrote the book Unconditional Parenting. I will just double check that, but this is the quote. So he says in his book, is it possible that what I just did or said to my child had more to do with my needs, my fears, my upbringing than what's really in their best interests? And that sticks on my fridge. Like, obviously you can't see it, but I have that on my fridge as just a daily reminder, because this stuff is difficult. And it's not about perfection. It is not, but it's about being conscious and just checking in every day, and stuff like that really helps me.
This podcast is not about me, but I feel seen. That's all I want. That's all I want to say. I really love this. I love it. Another word that you use in your the talking points that you sent over was the word stigmatize. And I feel like that concept, that ableist kind of, you know, cultural concept that we have is a part of that. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Is this for me to pick up on, Jacqueline? You think?
This is yours.
Well, it's a big topic, and I think there's probably people more qualified to talk on it than me. But I think in relation to our objective to try and support parents, as Jacqueline said, advocacy is kind of a part of that. So if you're accompanying your child through different stages in their life, moving into school, for example, and then various stages of school, I think being able to understand stammering as what it is, rather than maybe how it has been perceived and stigmatized. I'm not sure if I've expressed that in the right way, but how it has been perceived and the ways in which it has been stigmatized is helpful for parents to then be able to advocate for their child as they move through these different social spaces. And then you can tell me, Jacqueline, but I think one of the hopes in therapy is that by equipping parents with that kind of insight and knowledge and understanding and empowering them in that way, we're also setting the stage for the child to kind of take on some of that and be able to build from that place as well. Because we're aware, research shows that having a stammer can impact your life in a variety of ways, whether that's as you move through education or professional opportunities or in social situations. So I think for parents to be kind of on the train, on the boat, I'm not sure the right analogy, in the gang, and then use some of that knowledge and that insight in how they bring up their child who stammers, could potentially improve the situation for that child as they grow up. And not just for them individually, but obviously we're thinking about broader changes that we can perhaps try and facilitate as well. I hope that makes sense.
It really does. And I think what's interesting is, there's a huge movement within the stammering, stuttering community around acceptance. When a parent comes into a clinic, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear you've just got to accept it, because this will impact on their child's life. It's not all kind of unicorns and roses. There will be bumps across the road. And I think this is why it's important to speak to parents about what their role is as well. We've got a separate role. And as parents, they don't need to fix this. Their job, in a way, is to be able to, as Ronan said, kind of advocate or be the ally or be able to validate those feelings like, yeah, this is just really hard at the minute. But also not for us to necessarily come in with our parenting cape, which again is, mine's always on. And I actually have to take it off sometimes, a lot. Well, now my 11-year-old tells me, take it off, Mum, I don't need it. But, it's that this is going to be a struggle, but I trust you. And so this is what the kind of app sort of tries to set up as well. It's like, we trust you, parents, for you to trust your child. We can model slowing down and making space for stammering for you to model that to your child. And so again, in that chain, that first person is the parent, because then if we miss out the parent and go straight to the child, who's got their back in everyday life? Who's there? And being able to really, really be clear about that role of, you might not like this. It's going to be hard to see a child struggle. I'll just give a quick example. A parent of mine had said, because I talk about being okay with being uncomfortable. It's all right for us to be uncomfortable in this space as a parent of a person who stammers. It's okay actually as us to be a therapist to be really uncomfortable in that situation as well. Like, that's a whole other thing. But I really like that sense of being uncomfortable. I don't like it at all, but being able to stay in it, I think, is really important. So this mum, do you have ice cream vans in America?
We do.
Like, yeah.
They even play a song.
Yeah,
Well,
great,
I won't
great.
sing it for you, but there are singing ice cream trucks here.
Yeah, brilliant. So so the mum was in this massive queue with the child, who had quite a significant stammer, quite a lot of tension going on. There was lots of kind of blocking. This child isn't really that bothered about his stammer. The mum is really, really bothered about the stammer. So we've done quite a bit of work with mum. And she knew that it was a really hot day and people were getting a bit edgy and everyone was just wanting the ice cream and they were tired. And she's thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to go up there. He's not going to be able to get his words out and people will be even more irate. So all of this kind of reel of information and thoughts were going through her head. And she was incredible and she stuck with that child. The child went and asked for his strawberry ice cream, stammered all the way through it. The ice cream man just made space and he got his ice cream, his strawberry ice cream, not even a flicker. The mum was in a mess inside. She'd kept it in, but she was thinking, if I'd gone in and said, I'll just say it for you. I'm really uncomfortable about all of this queue of people here. I'll just say it for you. We talked about if that had been the situation, which would have been fine. We looked at that other side of the coin of that message would have been, I kind of don't trust you to do this, or you're going to stammer and it's not okay to stammer in front of lots of people. And so she had that distinction, which, I think is just a great gift, really. If we can be able to give that and they can give that to the little people, then I think that's wonderful. Have I gone off on?
That was a wonderful story. And I think a wonderful illustration of an adult being with themselves and making space for their own anxieties and sitting with discomfort, which is, something that culture, at least here in the States, is not easy to do. It's not something that we're taught to do. We've shoved down the feelings and don't ever speak of it again. So having that story really just illustrated the importance of slowing down and self-awareness and accepting our own discomfort.
Jacqueline, I wanted to just come back to something that you mentioned. And I understand that for some parents coming into therapy, the ideas around acceptance and things like that are a challenge. And I myself, as a person who stammers, have found that journey from kind of wanting to get rid of stammering and hide as much as possible to slowly kind of becoming more and more accepting of it and meeting other people who stammer and all of the amazing things that community can bring, and being exposed to new ways of thinking about stammering, which I think is the important thing, that even if the parents aren't receptive to it in that moment or open, or that's not the way they want to go with things, just being aware that there are other options about how we think about it, because I think, at least for me, and I think people of my age, we were really brought up with only one way of thinking of it, which was, this isn't good, let's try and get rid of it, And I know I did, I needed other reference points I wasn't able to create a new theory about stammering from my own experiences, so I needed those external people to kind of bring that in to view for me. And I think it's the same for parents as well, that we can encourage them to move away from the idea of trying to fix things, but we can also show them that there's a world in which stammering isn't a problem, it's not something bad, maybe there's even benefits to it. I know that people I know in the stammering community, myself included, would be able to identify some. So I think that's an important aspect of it as well.
And I think as well, we have lots of parents, I'm saying parents, but I haven't said this, caregivers, anyone important in the little person's life, who are actually pretty chilled with the stammer. Like, I do think society is, there was actually a poll by Stammer from the British Stammering Association, and I won't give the number, but there was some really quite large percentage of children who were actually kind of quite accepting of their stammering from quite a young age. So I do think there is a really positive societal shift. And I get a lot of parents who come in, and it is just to get like, well, if this is it, I'm fine with it. If it means they're going to stammer, I'm fine with it. But I just need to know that I'm doing my best. And that, again, is a similar concern. So it may not be, I just want rid of it. It's not all like that. But, parents need to know really quite immediately. This is why we've kind of created this app. So parents can get the information right from that moment. And then those parents are like, okay, right. All I need to do is just continue to see my whole child, have my focus on their kind of, not just on the stammer, but all of the wonderful other things that they're doing. And so I can rest easy now. That's just as important as those parents who are like, get rid of it. I just don't want it. I can't handle it, because I think actually that's less and less from all my times of working. So I do think we've got a really positive societal shift, which makes me very, very happy.
I want to hear more about the app, but before we get there, I want to circle back to one of the things you mentioned, which I think is a really important point in terms of the role of the parents and caregivers, is that we as therapists are transient. And I think this kind of, touches on our role and our healthcare systems, which is, different where you are versus where we are. But an SLP is going to be in the life of a child for one school year before they move on, maybe a few. If it's through a private care setting, it sounds like you all have long wait lists and short visit limits, but insurance has visit limits. We're transient. We're not a permanent fixture of a child's life by design, right? And I think by not centering, I really love the way you're by refocusing on the parent, you're creating an ally for life. You're creating a support person for life, which is so important.
Yeah, because without that, we've got a little person who's growing up that could be feeling potentially lonely. And also, if mum or dad is saying, you did really well today, you didn't stammer. Oh, that's fantastic. But again, with love, again, with real appreciation of when you do this, you don't stammer. And then all of a sudden, that little person who wants to please their mum and dad is thinking, mum doesn't like it actually when I stammer, so I'm going to find ways not to stammer. I know ways where I can be fluent. And I know if I don't say that word, or if I don't put my hand up in that class, then and so it goes on. So to me, it's kind of, well, it's huge. It's huge. And also to empower parents, because parents will be doing some really good stuff already, but they might be thinking, oh, well, what do I need to do with the stammer? So often they will be making space, but they don't know if that's because actually making space and doing less is what we're actually presenting to the parents. And so, but we often need to be doing something, give me something to be doing. But actually, if we can say to parents that what you're doing there is a very active way of supporting your little person to be able to say what they want to say, and they're like, oh, well, I can do that. So if we can find ways that things that parents are doing already, of which there will be loads, then again, it is about this is what we talk about in the app as well. It is about relationship, and it is about connection, and it is about so much more than the stammer. The stammer is actually a little bit irrelevant. When I speak to some parents, and I'll say, they might come in and say, oh, well, they stammer so much more when they're tired, or, they just, if we're not in routine, and again, I try and maybe take it a little bit away from that stammer talk. Okay, so Katie loves to have routine and she loves to have structure. So it's about what things does Katie feel at her most kind of calm, or what environment does Katie thrive in? Let's do more of that. And they know, we don't know the answer to that. So yeah, to be able to take us out of it, if we can sometimes, especially with these little ones. I think we have a different role with children who are coming in who are really, really struggling with their stammer. We're not talking about that at this point, but I think for these kind of younger ones, we maybe need to kind of get down off our box and put parents up there instead.
Take off the expert hat, right? Because we're there to facilitate and support, not be experts full of ego.
Yeah, which is hard again for us therapists sometimes. We need to just, all of this stuff that we're talking about in terms of giving parents, we need to do for ourselves. We need to check in with our thinking. And this is why I do a course for therapists. Also, can I just say a massive disclaimer? I'm no expert at this. This is come from lots and lots and lots of mistakes, lots of reflection, lots of goofiness, and just tripping up all over the place, and it's not smooth. This is not an easy path. This is a harder path. But I think if we can take the time as therapists to look at our own thinking, to look at our own role, and as I say, I do that workshop for therapists, and which talking to 160 therapists is really, really scary. It's the hardest bit of my year. But it's well received. So yeah, all these wonderful open-hearted therapists who are willing to look at themselves. It's brilliant.
That's awesome. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the role of technology here. So now that we've kind of established the importance of the caregiver, the importance of our own professional humility, centering the needs of the family and the parents, what role does technology play? I mean, it's 2024. I don't spend 5 minutes of my day without interacting with some piece of technology. So how is our current technological climate kind of impacting this work?
Should I have a go here? Well, I should disclaim, I'm not a speech therapist. I have gone back to school to try and join you all on the box, but I'm not there yet. Hopefully one day soon. One day, okay, yeah, on the ground. So I can talk to you about this from my perspective, which is kind of from I'm a person who stammers, which obviously has an influence, but also from a research perspective, and just trying to kind of identify problems, I guess, and think of potential solutions. So what we're doing isn't particularly groundbreaking. Technology is used across healthcare in lots of ways, which we won't go into, but there's many examples where apps are used to kind of bridge the gap a little bit between in-person sessions with a professional of some kind, and then the everyday life, which is the much more significant portion of time for most people. And I think in lots of areas, the idea of transfer or generalization is a challenge, both from a clinical perspective and for the person who's receiving help. So examples may be, for example, in mental health support, there are, in our context in the UK, apps that are used in the NHS to support people who are receiving mental health support from professionals, but in maybe other moments of the day when they need something, there is an option there for them. So it's about bridging this gap. In our world of stammering and speech therapy, a significant challenge in the UK is providing access to support in a timely fashion. So unfortunately, there's not enough speech therapy support for the demand. And that means that people can be waiting anywhere really from 6 weeks to 6 months or more to receive support. So in that period of time, there's a lot of space there for the kind of things we've discussed, the challenges, the anxiety to arise, and for parents to be unsure about how to support. So technology offers kind of a potential solution there. And as you say, the vast majority of people now own a smartphone and use apps for various aspects of their everyday life. So having one there for something like this also kind of makes practical sense for lots of people. And there's a shift, it seems, with some healthcare organizations, I'm not sure if it's this way in the US, towards encouraging kind of self-management is the term people use. So providing people with resources that can potentially help them on a day-to-day and reduce their need to access in-person support. Obviously, we want that support to be there. We're not trying to replace that, but we're also aware that maybe with this extra support, we can kind of make space for other people who might be more in need. So it's about finding the balance there. And yeah, just kind of I could talk about this for a long time. I'll try not to, but it's about immediacy of information for people. It's about helping them make small changes potentially every day that will contribute to something greater. And it's about improving access ultimately. And for people who stammer and their families, there's not been many options for support. In some places, there are no options for support. So bringing another option to the table was something important, I think, for us in our work. But as I say, our work is a reflection of a broader series of changes that I think are happening across healthcare as well.
We've had some really good feedback from therapists about how it can reduce their time, clinical sessions, but also that perhaps parents are already come in with a slightly different mindset through this. The app's kind of just 10 days, like 5-minute videos. So they're kind of often a bit more in the zone, which can help therapists like, oh, okay, right. So you're thinking about that already, which is great. And also I think it having kind of parents a bit more kind of, I guess, primed, or that's a silly word to use, but maybe even a bit more relaxed or a bit more confident. Like that's really great for therapists. So I feel like this can really be a support for therapists as well as a support for parents. And already we've kind of introduced some certain topics or certain concepts.
So I love that you mention you used the word primed, and I could see how that would be a really good word, because I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my own experiences as a parent and how a lot of this is hard emotional work for the family, for the mom, for the dad, for the caregiver. And when you're in therapy as a parent, you've got the therapist there, you've got the kid there. If you have a toddler, you're trying to maybe make sure the toddler isn't climbing on the couch or breaking a toy. There's a lot going on.
Mhm.
And I can imagine that by having access to technology with short, digestible pieces of information, there's a little bit more room for self-reflection, for quiet thinking, for kind of digesting that information at a pace that feels more personal. As opposed to, I've taken my own children to therapy, and I'm just thinking of like, there's not a lot of self-reflection when you're listening and digesting and parenting
Yeah.
all at the same time. So this kind of gives that nice separation there.
Well, that was something that I was a bit reluctant about, actually. I didn't know if it would work. Like, I'm used to working in a clinic setting, or I'm used to working in people's homes. And I ask a lot of questions and be guided by parents. I use a lot of solution-focused therapy. I'm thinking, how on earth can we put this into an app? Do you remember, Ronan, right?
Yeah.
Early stages, I was like, I don't know if we can make this happen. Like, how can we have empathy? How can we make it feel nurturing? How can we be able to have that reflective space within the app? And you're right, Kate, I feel like I've been very surprised by this, that it actually has allowed more space for that. We're not saying anything so different from what you might see on a sheet, like a handout type thing. Or we are actually going a bit deeper, actually, than what you get off a handout. But I think one thing that was really, really important when we were writing this is, can we make sure, because one size does not fit all, how can we write an app, a generalized app, but really still get deep into that kind of nitty gritty stuff that I think is so important. And I do think we've got it, Ronan, actually. I do feel like we got that. That was one of our most important objectives, to be able to have that. And in a clinic setting, unless you've got a whole hour with just the parent, which I do love to do, but I think it can be luxury. I think there is something about the reflective questions, and also saying, it says things like, these are some things that you could try, what's best for your family. Like, again, it's that you're in charge here. We'll just suggest a few things. We'll facilitate. I didn't know if that was appable, if that's a word. But I realise now that I think it is. And also, again, it's not about us. It's not us saying, right, again, I'm thinking UK, your name's now at the top of the waiting list, you come into the clinic. Like, that's us, isn't it? That's us in our terms. Like, oh, we're ready to see you now. Whereas an app goes straight into that parent's, I need some help right now. So they're in charge then of their therapy or their situation. And I think that technology can do that really, really wonderfully.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, just to add on to a couple of things there, one is that, I could look at this slightly from the outside, but I see Jacqueline's work and the impact that has. And I think how amazing it is that parents anywhere really around the world can have Jacqueline in their pocket, giving them a bit of a talk and helping them through the day. She will cringe at me for saying that, but I know that's true.
For those of you who can't see, she is cringing. She's cringing right now.
And I know that that's a hugely valuable thing when you don't have access to any immediate support, to have, someone like Jacqueline who thinks about this stuff so in such a way that is, I think that's incredible that we can facilitate that to people. And then I like that Jacqueline's brought some examples in from her work. So just an example of a couple of things that we've learned from people who have used the app. One is that we've not designed the app at all for children. It's not designed at all for children to use, only the adults who are supporting them. However, had a couple of stories where the app has, we've talked about bridging gaps. The app has bridged gaps between a child who stammers and the parent, who weren't able to talk about it. It had become kind of a taboo subject, which can happen with stammering. You know, people who stammer sometimes don't want to talk about it. People around them aren't quite sure how to get those conversations happening. But we had a great piece of feedback, a great story of a parent using it with their child, and they would go through the content and then talk about that stuff. So that was kind of opening those conversations up. And equally, we've heard about parents kind of using it as a team, I guess, in a way. So we're really kind of seeing how people adapt it and use it in ways that make sense for them, you know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of this way of providing help as well.
So when you think about the collaboration between, you know, the healthcare side of things and the technology side of things, and kind of how that relationship has worked for you guys as being part of this app development, and then using it, Jacqueline, in your practice moving forward, what are some real pluses or maybe some barriers that you had through that process? I know one of the things you mentioned, Jacqueline, was concern about not being able to have that reflective relationship with your clients. Are there any other pieces, just having gone through, because I wouldn't have the first idea how to design an app as an SLP. So sort of what has that process been like?
Yeah. I'm going to say thank goodness for Ronan, who was able to kind of allow my fluffy, verbose, kind of passionate, all of that stuff. And then we've got a wonderful, wonderful software team. Ronan could just take all of that kind of fluffy stuff and not let the passion go from it. And then the software team very, very wonderfully put it in. And I think there is a sort of sense of, you know, I think there is a little bit of a, what's the word, kind of, I think speech therapists can be a bit scared of technology, actually. I know I was before I came into this. However, I did see it as a wonderful platform to be able to get information so quickly to parents, and that was the thing for me. But I think we can be a bit reserved around it and what's going to happen, you know, in the future, and what's going to happen to us and what's going to happen to that relationship. But I think, as Ronan said, another option is just wonderful that fits in with parents' lives, and being able to go on and have workshops and do it on an evening, so you don't have, you know, toddlers climbing all over, and have all of that come into your own space. I think, I'm going to say especially for stammering, but I bet other therapists would be maybe thinking that this could work in their areas too. But for stammering, that sense of us coming to the families rather than the families coming to us. And I think technology is just a wonderful way of doing that. But I do think we still need to keep the heart in technology. And that was one of my reservations, really. Is there anything else, Ronan, that in terms of that?
Yeah, I think the challenge is, as you say, kind of maintaining that fuzziness and the human aspect of it that is
I think I
so
said
important.
that word first, because if you just said that word, that wouldn't have been okay. But
so yeah,
okay.
just maintaining
Fuzzy's a good
that
word. It's good.
Yeah, you
It's
know,
good. It was perfect.
maintaining that is the challenge, I think, and trying to kind of as you say, maintain empathy and the kind of, I guess, vibe that you might try and create in a therapy room or space. The challenge is trying to create something that approximates that.
Because so much in therapy, I think, is about the relationship.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to replicate that at all. And there are other, as we know, other bits of technology that don't think about that. And we're certainly not trying to be, as although Ronan, you did say therapist in the pocket, but it is just about being able to be an adjunct to that therapy and fill those gaps. But also, if it means that parents can kind of go onto this app and get that reassurance and don't need therapy, winner, winner, chicken dinner.
I love that expression. That was so great.
It's great.
Winner, chicken dinner, indeed.
It's great. Everyone wins, It's great for the service. It means someone who perhaps does need that support can take that time. So, that's great too.
No. I think thinking about our collaboration and our work, I think trust is important when you've got these kind of two, potentially not conflicting, but, not quite sure how these things fit together. And I'd like to give a shout out to Kirsten House, who was a big part of this project in linking Jacqueline and I up. She kind of identified things in both of us that she thought could work together and did that. Kirsten is a great speech therapist, also a person who stammers, and is also deputy CEO of Stammer, which is the leading charity in the UK for stammering. So I think that facilitated kind of the trust that we built on. And as Jacqueline said, she wasn't quite sure. I found it a challenge transferring all of those ideas into, as Jacqueline says, like an appified way. I'm not a technology person, so I wasn't responsible for any of the software. And as Jacqueline said, we have a great team around us who have played a vital part in this. But I try to kind of translate the work that Jacqueline did and present it in a way that would, in the most simple terms, fit on a screen. We're kind of restricted by the technology, as well as it provides us with opportunities, but it's also restrictive in a way, and we have to kind of work within those spaces. And I think we can get a bit carried away with technology and think that it's going to fix everything and solve everything. Some people don't want to receive help in that way, and that's completely fine. Some people don't have a phone, we also have to think about the fact that this isn't just the only way we should be trying to help people. But if there's an opportunity there to provide another option for people, then I think it is kind of worth exploring. And I think something that is important as well is the way that you guys as therapists can kind of personalize the experience on the fly in a way, in front of a person, and adapt with your insight and experience and knowledge. And that's very hard to replicate. We're working on ways to do that now with kind of the next version of the Penguin app, which we call Super Penguin for now. But yeah, that is a challenge that I think is key, and we need to be aware that it's not a one size fits all. Some people benefit from different information at different points in their experience. So yeah, just kind of keeping all of those things in mind as well, I think is an important part of the process. It's a challenge, but the challenges are what makes it rewarding in a way, I think. So that's kind of how we've approached it up to now.
Earlier in our conversation, we were talking about how important it is for caregivers to have the knowledge. And with that knowledge, it's going to help them in building more positive relationships. I was wondering if you could just tell me and our listeners a little bit about what the Penguin app looks like. So, what I'm picturing in my mind is sort of some digestible bits of caregiver information to help give people some of those basics that they might get in an initial few therapy sessions. But I wonder if you can just help us like visualize what it looks like a little bit. Yeah, Kate.
Before you tell us that, I'm realizing that we have forgotten to mention something that's very important, which is that this is free. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so people can find
This is
on
a
the
free
app stores.
resource for people to download. And I am feeling like we should have mentioned that earlier, but we love free stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, you can find it on Android, iOS, all of that stuff. I'll tell you what I think, and then Jacqueline can tell you, and let's see if it matches or not. So we designed it as kind of like it's a 10-day thing. So we didn't want people to kind of rush through it. We wanted to kind of model a bit of, let's slow things down a little bit, get reflective. So we encourage people to take it day by day if that works for them. Obviously, spread it out further if you'd like. And we were very conscious of time. So we know time is limited. Parents are particularly under time pressures. So we wanted to keep things kind of short and sweet, but without compromising on the information or the messages that we were giving to people. So another aspect of the challenge was to try and condense things and be quite succinct with how we were presenting information.
Neither Ronan or I are succinct.
Yeah.
That was a challenge. How can
as you may have learned from this recording.
The amount of times we've had to cut each other's work, more words out, more words out, more words out.
But that's the trust, we're there. So yeah, providing that to people, and we wanted it to be not overwhelming, wanted it to be supportive, not time consuming, but give enough, so all of this kind of balancing between these things. So that's basically how people will experience the app if they have a look, I think. And we tried to it's ordered. This is, I guess, in a way I'm contradicting myself, because we basically created an order in which the information comes, which this is one of the limitations, I think, potentially with the app. But we were imagining people who maybe hadn't had much support before and were more or less starting from a place of not much insight. So we were very careful about the order in which we presented information to people and the things we were suggesting to them and asking them to reflect on as well. So there was that aspect of it as well, which I recognize now might not be the best case for everybody. And that's what we're trying to work out, how to kind of improve that moving forward. But yeah, so there was a flow of things which was also important to us in how we created the content that was there. Jacqueline, do you want to take over and stop me rambling?
So we have this wonderful little character called Bene the Penguin, and he's the main, or actually, I don't know if it's a he. Bene.
I don't know either.
And he's very, very cute. And just, it turns out everyone loves a penguin. But Ronan came up with the idea because if you in stammering world, we think about icebergs, and what we see above the waterline, the bit that you can see is kind of what other people see, but then below the waterline, underneath the water, can be so much more in terms of emotions and frustrations or excitement or all of these different types of emotions. So, and penguins are on icebergs. So Bene is the star of the show. And then we have a little video, and it is a bit cringe because it's mine and Ronan's voice. So I do day one and he does day two. And we've got this kind of lift music behind it, haven't we? It's like all very kind of calming. But people seem to like that. They kind of like that, but it's a bit cringy to listen back to.
I think it's worth saying as well, we did this almost as an experiment.
Yeah.
We didn't really think about it too much. So there's definitely things we would change.
Yeah.
Maybe the lift music would
well, you made up that music as well.
Yeah. Now I question
like,
what
really
I was up to at that time.
But actually,
I just want to jump in, Jacqueline, because I don't think I can take credit for the penguin. Our amazing illustrator, Hillamine, who you can find on Instagram. Her handle is @justhutter. She's a person who's hutters as well, and just creates the most amazing artwork around stuttering and the experience of it as well. And I was fortunate enough to meet her a few years ago, and fortunate enough that she was up for being involved in this project as well. So I think the penguin credit should go to her.
Okay.
Just wanted to add that.
And so we have these 5-minute little videos that you can listen to, or you can read. Then an activity for parents to kind of reflect on and how it might fit into their lives. Then we have like a little takeaway page. And because I'm such a big fan of quotes, we have a quote every day. But again, I think it's another way of parents thinking about things. So it's full of these kind of little sort of mindful quotes, which, I don't know how people have taken to the quotes, but it's part of it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And so some of the content includes things like, how can you help? Where is your focus? So we talk about focus being on the stammer or focus on the whole child. A little bit about slowing down your life, if that's applicable to you, or slowing down your pace, however you might interpret slowing down. Taking time in talking, and we bring in about kind of the whole family situation, and it's not about creating this really artificial situation so the child can just take the whole kind of stage, but about how that can fit in with busy family life. A little bit about talking about stammering with your little person, supporting struggle, and then next steps. So it is kind of the basics within that. But I do think because it's a human voice, then it does give that bit of extra rather than, say, like a handout or something. So so go on and have a look and see what you think, and see if it's helpful to you. Or...
Sorry, Jacqueline, I didn't mean to interrupt you then.
I was just waffling at that point.
Okay. And I have to think about the research side of things as well. And within the app, we've included a self-report, just a really short kind of 5-item self-report assessment, I guess you could call it, evaluation, which we modeled on various validated measures, but we decided that we wanted to make something that was a bit more user-friendly in that sense, and not too overwhelming and not too kind of woof, because some of the way questions are phrased in the real scientific style can be a bit intimidating, I think, which is what we were trying to move away from a little bit with the app. So we do ask parents to reflect on a few things at the beginning, at the end, and at the end of their journey with the app. And we've been pleasantly surprised by the outcomes of that. And it really seems that, I think I'm right in saying that 70% of the people who've used the app, which is now in their thousands, have seen significant kind of changes to things like concern about stammering or confidence in the support that they're able to provide for their child and things like this. So that's been a rewarding thing to see as well. And another part of the app, sorry, Jacqueline, just to say that we haven't mentioned it, but another part of the app that we were very conscious about was including a stammering voice as well as a speech therapy voice, as a way of kind of, just giving parents as much of a big, I don't know if this is the right way to imagine it, but like the big picture view, you know? And it just so happens that it's us, because no one else would do it, but you know, it would have had the same, maybe not the same impact, but we're not voiceover artists by any means, but we tried our best to kind of present that as well to parents as a way of showing them that stammering's okay, you know? And
Well, I am so excited to share this with our audience. I will say that while you were speaking, I downloaded the app, and I can attest that the background music that you used is very relaxing.
very lifty.
It's very relaxing. There you are. So I want to say quickly that we will link the app in our show notes. It is free. This is it seems like a really wonderful resource for a variety of reasons, not only centering caregiver, parent, family perspectives and values, which is part of the speech language pathology evidence-based practice model. But another reason it dawned on me while you were speaking is that there are very few instances where parent and caregiver training or parent and caregiver counseling is billable. So we have this really difficult intersection with our infrastructure and our industry as well, in terms of parents getting direct access to the care that they need. So we will link all of this in the show notes. As we, in our final minutes, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
I wish I could come up with something really wise at this point.
You've said so many wise things already. I think you're off the hook.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Winner, chicken dinner. That's it. But I do think as therapists, you know, we're talking about being reflective, and we're talking about this kind of different way of working. I think if we can just be curious, and then that'll show curiosity to our parents, like with us kind of modeling what we would like our parents to deliver to our little people. And I think that's what we do with the app as well. We're modeling within that. And actually, I think I was, again, a little bit worried that we wouldn't be able to do that, but I think we have. So I think as long as we are clear in our intentions and what we want to be able to deliver, and modeling that, I think is so much, it's a harder path, but so much more in it than just telling. And I think that in parenting too, which is why parenting is really hard.
That was quite wise, I think. I'm struggling to find wise words, but I think what I would like to say is to encourage the professionals that are listening, the speech pathologists who work with children who stammer, to really look to the stammering community. And there's so many amazing organizations out there. NSA in the US, Friends, Space, to name a few. And I strongly believe that for children who stammer, it's really important to let them know that there's other people like them out there, doing all kinds of things. The stammering experience as a child can be quite restrictive, if you don't have, you know, the right kind of support, perhaps. So, yeah, I think that's just, I guess, a personal plea to try and kind of bring that into these children's world, and see how they react to that. That
was lovely. Thank you both so much for taking the time to come on the show and share all of your knowledge and all of these resources. Everything that you've mentioned will be listed in the show notes as a resource. You've also sent over some literature that is, behind a lot of the concepts and things that you've brought to the table today. So thank you again so much for being here. It was so wonderful having you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us in today's episode. As always, you can use this episode for ASHA CEUs. You can also potentially use this episode for other credits depending on the regulations of your governing body. To determine if this episode will count towards professional development in your area of study, please check in with your governing bodies, or you can go to our website, www.slpnerdcast.com. All of the references and information listed throughout the course of the episode will be listed in the show notes. And as always, if you have any questions, please email us at info@slpnerdcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to welcome you back here again soon.